Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and today's conversation is all about the application. I'm joined by my admissions colleague, Zoe Mayfield-Boykin. Zoe, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. Always glad to be on the podcast.
It's great to have you here. I want to talk about approaching the application process, effectively kind of getting organized for the application process. So, high-level question here for you. How do you encourage candidates to think about the application process generally?
Yeah, it's a great question. And folks have heard me say this before, but I really do encourage people to think about this as a narrative exercise. This is your opportunity to tell us your story. When thinking about that narrative, that narrative could go in a lot of different directions, but we hope that you will cover, of course, the academic. We want to understand your academic background, the degrees that you've held. And what you've accomplished up until this point. We also want to understand professionally what you've accomplished. This is business school. Everyone is here to make a material difference in their careers. And so we want to understand what you have accomplished thus far and where you hope to go professionally. And then, of course, the personal. I think it's the one that people leave out the most. But personally, you're going to be bringing all of these elements of who you are, where you've been, your lived experiences into the classroom during the discussion. And so we want to understand who you are and the type of person that you will be in that classroom during that discussion.
Yeah, people oftentimes will discount that personal piece of their application, and they will want to focus solely on the academic and the professional. But we're very interested in who you are personally. I always encourage candidates to think about the application as an initial introduction to who they are. And so, as people are getting organized for this, I think it's worth spending a little bit of time, thinking about what you want to make sure the admissions committee learns about you through the application. What effectively are your application priorities? Those things at the end of the day, we've read your application, we absolutely know about you. So a little bit of organization on the front end can go a long way, because then it can help you really think about how you're leveraging each part of the application to effectively tell that story, to your point, how you're advancing those priorities. So I want to talk a little bit about application timing. We offer multiple application deadlines for both Executive MBA and Part-Time MBA. How do you encourage candidates to think about when is a good time to apply or when is the right time to apply?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question. As you mentioned, we do have multiple deadlines for both of our programs, part-time and executive MBA. But my best advice is to choose the application that you really feel, the application deadline that is, that you really feel you can put together the strongest application. We have these multiple deadlines because we really do feel that we will meet strong competitive candidates for each round. And we anticipate admitting students in each one of those rounds. But that being said, I think, it is always to your benefit to submit an earlier application, but it should never be at the expense of submitting a strong application. I think, one of the reasons why I always encourage an earlier round as opposed to a later round is that when you are thinking about returning to school as a working professional, there are many things that you're going to be balancing: your personal life, your professional life, as well as pursuing your MBA. And so the sooner that you can submit an application, hopefully receive a positive decision from us, the sooner you can start to socialize this decision to return to school with the folks in your lives, your supervisor, your family, et cetera.
Yeah, you're right. Applying early, you're applying at a time we have more seats available in the class, more scholarship money available. But to your point, we admit people pretty much all throughout our cycle is the typical sort of rhythm of an executive MBA or part-time MBA cycle. But there is something about, applying earlier and knowing your plans and starting to plan with people at home and at work. I think the other thing that we oftentimes will get asked about from candidates is, well, how do I know if it's a strong application? I'm not on the admissions team. And the reality, though, is it's an application. When we say strong application, it's an application that you feel confident in when you press submit. You feel like you're putting your best foot forward. You're giving yourself every opportunity to be successful, in the admissions process. I think candidates are generally a good judge of that. So to your point, you don't want to rush an application at the expense of the quality of your application, but you also want to be mindful of the fact that, like, as we go later into the cycle, things can sometimes tighten up, both on the admissions end as well as on the scholarship end, just because our class will start to take shape and our scholarship budget will be increasingly committed. So some things for candidates to think about. But yeah, I think that's always a good opportunity to reach out and schedule some time with our team. We offer one-on-one conversations and we welcome the opportunity to connect with folks. So if people have questions about application timing, absolutely encourage people to take us up on the opportunity to connect. What's a good way to kind of get organized for the application process? Obviously, there are a lot of things that people have to put together an application. How do you encourage people to get organized for this process?
Yeah, I think first things first is to take a step back and spend some time reflecting on those three buckets that I mentioned. So the personal, professional, and the academic. You will have an opportunity in the application itself to highlight those portions of yourself, and so take stock of the academic. You are going to be asked to submit. Of course, unofficial transcript at the time of application is more than fine from all degree related coursework, but take stock of what you've accomplished academically in that way, gather those transcripts. Um, in addition to that, when you think about the professional, your resume, think about what you want to highlight on the resume, the impact and the roles that you've held on that resume, and thinking about putting it together in such a way that really reflects, like I said, all that you've accomplished professionally. And then the personal, you have an opportunity to shed some light on your values, what's important to you, where you hope to go, your goals in our short answer questions. And so thinking about how you might want to approach those questions in a way that does really reflect your values and your goals as an applicant.
Yeah, I love that advice. One of the things I think can sometimes be helpful for people in terms of really honing in on that story is to start by getting your resume in order. One of the nice things about the application process is you have a job history section where you're going to put some basically nuts and bolts information about recent roles that you've had, typically up to 5 entries there. But the resume becomes a place of where you can summarize your full work history, where you can really focus on the leadership and impact and results that you've achieved. I think that's a good way to connect with your story and get yourself kind of mentally organized for this process. The other thing I would encourage folks to do, and keep in mind, some of these application process elements are faster than others, right? Things that are within your control, working on the application, crafting your short answer questions, putting your resume together, you're in control of all of that. Your recommendation can be a bit of a slower part of the process. And so starting a conversation with your current supervisor or whoever you decided to be your recommender or your recommenders, we will accept up to two recommenders, although only one is required. I think that's good to start there because to Zoe's earlier point, you want to be having conversations with people at work regarding your interest in doing this program. You want to start those conversations early. You want to have them often. You want to continue them as you move through the admissions process and certainly as you prepare to start school. And so approaching your recommender, the nice thing about getting that resume together first is that gives you something to then hand to the recommender to say, look, hey, here's some of the things that we've worked on. Here's some of our experiences together. And it potentially gives your recommender a little bit more of a runway to submit their materials because they're really busy people. They're typically your supervisor, someone pretty senior. You're asking them to do a favor for you. And so those are a couple pieces. I think of it as all very interconnected, but I love your point about telling your story and kind of thinking about how that translates across the application. What's one thing that you wished applicants knew about our application process that maybe is a little bit below the radar?
Yeah, I really wish more applicants knew just how sort of high touch and personalized this process is designed to be, and that we do really enjoy getting to know candidates. And we provide many opportunities to get to know us as an admissions team, especially on the working professional side. You mentioned earlier, Brett, one-on-one conversations with a member of an admissions committee to be a thought partner, to answer questions about the program, to answer application questions. And everything sort of in between. But that's really another time for us to get to know you and help you get to where you would like to go. There's more opportunities to come visit us, come take a tour of Sands Family Grounds. You can join us for a class visit. But we enjoy spending time with our candidates. We enjoy getting to know you, and we really enjoy helping you get to where you would like to go.
I love that advice, Zoe, because there's so many points of connection that we have with candidates. Ideally, as people are doing their research, as they're learning more about Darden, as they're applying, and even as they're preparing to start school. That's one of the great things about our job. The executive MBA, part-time MBA, programs that have a very human scale to it. It's very easy to engage with people and get to know people through this process. So, last but not least, you've already shared a lot of application advice, but I'm curious, what's one more thing you would want our listeners to consider as they think about their own application journeys?
Yeah, I think I will probably steal two pieces here as opposed to one. But the first is that And you can let me know if you disagree with me, Brett. But in my I think our collective years of doing admissions work, we've never read a perfect application. They just do not exist, and there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. But what I share that because I think many candidates are seeking perfect in their applications, and that's just not what we're looking for. We want you to lean into your strengths, and if there are areas that are weaker or have weaknesses that need to be addressed, we want you to address them. We certainly understand we are human. We understand you are human. And so we are looking for candidates who have strengths to offer, right? But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. And so I think folks could really lean into their strengths more rather than trying to develop perfect applications. That's the first piece. And then my second piece is to just really use us as a resource. As I mentioned earlier, we're a very high touch team. We enjoy getting to know candidates, and we enjoy helping folks get to and through the admissions process. And so reach out to us, allow us to be a resource, allow us to really help you in this moment.
Yeah, there are no perfect candidates. I love that advice. Everybody has strengths, things to offer. As a candidate, as an applicant, your goal is to highlight those things, to bring them forward. There's no particular weight assigned to any part of our application. What I always share with candidates when you kind of think about these kinds of things, though, is your story is unique. So what stands out from your applications could be different than what stands out from another person's application. So different parts of the application matter differently for different candidates because of the nature of the story that you're telling. And so, I think when you consider all of this as an applicant, there's certainly parts of your story that maybe you wish were different or that you wish you could change, but you can't. Okay, that's one thing. But there's also a lot of things as you approach the application process that are still very much within your control. The big thing is how you approach the application process. To Zoe's earlier advice, getting organized and sort of thinking about the story that you're telling through the application, developing those application priorities, and maybe taking those early steps of putting a resume together and being really intentional and thoughtful about who your recommender is going to be and how you set that person up for success, and giving yourself enough time to really craft a thoughtful application. It's not something you have to take months to do, but just giving yourself space and time, because what really differentiates candidates, I think, in this process are the people who really understand their stories. To Zoe's earlier point, the self-reflection, the introspection. Candidates ask us all the time, what makes for a great application? And it's really people who understand who they are and where they want to go and how a Darden MBA can fit into that. And they're able to translate that not only across the application, but also potentially across an interview. So, Zoe, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Always great to be on the podcast. Thanks, Brett.